G'day all, it's Colin from PC TLC and thanks for joining me. In this video we're going to be installing Archlabs with Legacy and with EFI. We'll first start with Legacy, so let's get that started. I've full screened it, so it's going to boot automatically. So you're going to have a full black screen. So standard install, Archlabs installer. You've got other options there, run as a live session, change the installation name, set root partition and boot partition to save time mounting. Haven't tried any of those, only the standard install. So we need to type Archlabs-installer. Press enter. And this welcome screen here is the installer. It'll help you get Archlabs installed and set up on your system. If you are unsure about a section, the default option will be listed, or the first selected item will be the default. And then you got the menu navigation. I'll navigate you through the menu as we go. Enter. US English for me. So it's verifying the Wi-Fi there. Because I'm on Virtualbox, it's already got Wi-Fi. So if you was on real hardware, which I've done already, that'll pop up a little screen and it'll allow you to put your Wi-Fi information in. So they got the show the device tree, partitioning. I'm going to go to select directly to the partitioning. Important, choose carefully when editing, formatting and mounting partitions, or your data may be lost. So this is a big data warning. So you really need to know what you're doing here. To mount a partition without formatting it, select skip when prompted to choose a file system during the mounting stage. This can only be used for partitions that already contain a file system and cannot be the root partition. It needs to be formatted before install. So enter for OK. Okay, so I'm going to use, now you can choose auto, that uses the whole device and partitions, automatically chooses your partitions, does it all for you, so you don't have to worry about doing anything. So that's a simple install right there. I'm going to make my own partitions just to demonstrate how some of these partition editors work. I'm going to use cfdisk. I think that's the one I used in Arch Linux. Might have been fdisk, but I'm pretty sure it was cfdisk. So let's enter that. So we've got free space, so we'll hit enter for new, because you can see it's new is already highlighted. Press enter. Now we've got 61 gigs to work with there, so I'm going to make that 25 capital G, press enter. It'll be a primary, press enter. And I'm going to write that to disk, press enter, type yes. Then we arrow down. Now just to highlight the fact that the partition type, you can choose the partition type, but by default it chooses this Linux one here. That's what it chooses by default. That's all you need. So we'll just press enter on that. Arrow down to the free space again. It's already on new. Press enter. Then I'm going to make this 32G for gigabytes. Press enter. It's a primary, enter. Let's write that to disk. Yes. And then arrow down once more, new, it's already on 4 gigs, that's all that's left, and that's going to be our swap partition. Press enter, it's a primary, press enter, and write that to disk, type yes and enter. So that's our disk all written, and now we can quit. And as you can see, we've got our disk there, SDA 1, 2 and 3. So we can arrow down now to done, select OK and press enter. We go back to the main screen and now we have to mount our partitions. Press enter. Now we need to mount root, so select the root partition, which will be SDA1 25 gig. Press enter for OK. We're going to use ext4, enter. Format dev SDA1 as ext4, yes. And I'm just going to press OK here and keep it defaults. So that's mounted. Then we need to arrow down to device dev SDA3, which is our 4 gig, that's our swap, press enter. And then we've got extra disk there, which is this one. I'm not going to do anything with that. That's our data partition. I don't want to mount it yet. We don't need to. So I'm just going to go done, finish mounting step. So enter that. So now we select the bootloader, which will be grub. Username and password, press enter. Type your username, all lowercase. Tab key, put in your password. Tab key, password again. And then that password, if you leave these blank, that password will also be used for root. Press the tab key till you get to OK and then press enter. System configuration, enter. I'm just going to select bash. You may want to select any of the others. Enter for OK. Give the system a name, Archlabs-VBox for me because it's in Virtualbox. Press enter. And then I'm going to page down till I get to EN and then arrow up to English Australia AU. Enter. Arrow down to Australia, enter. Arrow down to your city, which for me is Perth. Enter that. You got all different Linux kernel options here. I'm just going to go with the standard one up the top, Linux Vanilla. Press enter for OK. Select my window manager. I'm going to arrow down to Plasma. I've got a viewer that asked me to look at some Arch-based distros, and Endeavour was one of them. Standard Arch install was another. I've pointed him to my video because I'm not installing that again. And this is Archlabs. So what we need to do here is I'm going to choose Plasma. I'm going to hit the space key and you'll see an asterisk there. So to select any of these things here, to highlight the asterisk key, you just need to press the space key and then highlight OK, which it is, and press enter. SDDM is the desktop display manager, and I think that's the only one that can be used for KDE Plasma. So press enter. Select additional packages. Now I will choose the ones that I did on real hardware, just so I can pretty much take you through exactly what I've done on real hardware. So I'll go down here, because that was a legacy install, the real hardware. Events document viewer, so press the space bar to select. Firefox, GIMP, LibreOffice, MPV Media Player, Qubit Torrent, Simple Screen Recorder. I might even, Simple Scan, I'm not sure if I installed that on real hardware, but I probably should have. Thunderbird, VLC, and that's about it. So I'm going to press OK. That's my extra packages. Run a command on the installed system. No, I don't need to do that. I don't want to view the configuration. I'm sure it's pretty right. Well, let's just try that. Let's just view that. So root partition SDA1, boot device dev SDA, swap partition dev SDA3, which is swap size 4 gig. No extra mounts. That looks good, so we'll press OK. Boot device, so boot partition, there's nothing. That should be OK, I'm pretty sure. So confirm choices and start the installation. Enter. And away we go. So that is the install complete. Now Archlabs does give us options to edit these files here if you need to. If you know that you need to edit any of these, then you can do that from here before rebooting. However, I'm okay with what we've done, so I'm just going to leave it on finished and press enter for OK, and we'll reboot. So we have Archlabs there for selection. Let's press enter, boot that. And we have the SDDM desktop manager. Not the prettiest thing. You probably get used to other KDE distros that really tweak this login screen to make it look really nice, but the default is left a lot to be desired. So yeah, don't know why the default for such a nice looking desktop, I don't know why the default looks so plain. So that is Archlabs installed. Now we do need to install guest editions, and that sometimes can be a problem, and that's for full screen. So I'm going to demonstrate how to do that. So first of all, I'm going to insert guest editions. Here, insert guest editions. Now that's opened up there. So we need to know where the guest editions are. So if we go to Dolphin and we go to guest editions and we right click, we click this little arrow here and we go back one folder, and then we right click and open in terminal here, and we'll just zoom that out a little bit. Now if we do an ls for list, we can see what's there. The one that we're after is the VBox Linux editions.run. So that's what we need to do. So we need to sudo capital V capital B box Linux with a capital L and editions with a capital A .run. I'll just make that so you can see the whole command there, and then we press enter on that and put in our password. Enter that. Oh, I've spelt it wrong, haven't I? That's what I've done. I've missed an I there. Linux editions.run. Spelling. Do you wish to continue? Yes. Now normally in Arch Linux this thing will fail and it will give us an error, which is what happens most times on an Arch base. Now you'll see here it says we need to run some of these commands. So what we're going to do is this command here I'm going to run. I'm going to sudo, and you can run commands in the folder that we're in, it doesn't matter. And we can do whatever we need to do for the system, and then we can just arrow up back to that first command we did to redo that command. So we can do sudo /sbin /rcv box add quick setup space all. Enter that, and that's done. So what we need to do now is we need to install the Linux headers. So sudo pacman space capital S Linux headers. Enter that. Now if I've done everything correctly, that should install the correct headers for that. We'll go enter that, because when the Y is big it means it's the default, so enter that. Now that's the Linux headers installed, so that's hit the arrow up key and go back to our original command, make sure it's the one with the correct spelling of course, and press enter. Okay, so that should be okay. Let's exit that, and we need to restart the system, so we'll do that and hopefully we get a full screen. And there we have our full screen. Happy with that. And that's how you get full screen in Arch Linux. It's a fairly simple process as long as you know what the process is. It's finding out what the process is that can be quite difficult. So that is the install of Arch Linux Legacy. And we'll just have a quick look to make sure that everything I wanted to install is installed. So we had Internet, Firefox, Thunderbird, Qubit Torrent. Go back. Graphics, which should be GIMP. Document Viewer, which was evince. Office, we had the full LibreOffice plus the document viewer. Multimedia, MPV player, VLC, simple screen recorder. So that's all installed, no problem at all. The rest is the default applications that come with the KDE desktop. So now what we'll do is we will have a look at the EFI install, and we'll do a very simple EFI install. We won't install any packages because it takes too long, and we shall also, oh yeah, that reminds me, let's have a look at the extra partition. Is it there? Is it mounted? So there's a 32 gig hard drive there, but I don't believe it's mounted, is it? Mount. So it's not automatically mounted. So if we go to let's see, disks. What have we got for disks? KDE. So what we need to do is, if you're in real hardware, this is what we need to do to mount that disk, to auto mount that disk, is pacman dash capital S little s means you're searching the pacman repositories. And we're going to be looking for, I think it's some GNOME disks. Let's check that out. That didn't find anything, so let's do the same thing, but we'll just search for disks. And then we can go through the search, or maybe we do a search for GNOME. Was probably a better option. GNOME disk utility is probably the one I'm looking for. So let's just try that. Sudo pacman dash capital S GNOME dash disk dash utility, and put in our password. Oh, I'd spelt it wrong again, didn't I? G M E, yep. Enter that. Yes is the default. And let's just check that out. See if that's there. We'll search for disks. That's the one. And then you've got the file system here, partition 1, partition 2. That's the one we want to auto mount, and then you got your swap. So that's partition options, edit mount options, and then we toggle that on, or toggle that off, sorry, and then we press OK. Just leave everything as default and put in your password, and that will automatically mount that disk. So that should be done. So let's just check that out and have a look at Dolphin again, and we'll have a look. It's not mounted, as you can see. So what we'll do is restart and see if that mounts. Okay, so we'll log into the system one more time. Check that out. Now by rights, that secondary disk should be mounted. Now you can mount it as a home disk. So search for that there. Now as you see, there's no little colored icon on there, which means that is mounted. So if we have a look, we can unmount it. So logging in straight away has mounted that hard drive. And what you can do is you can make in your home directory here, you can make links to these, or you can make links. You can create your documents, downloads, music, and all that in here. Make a link to them. Delete these ones here, and then create a link to those. So that's what you can do. In the EFI install, I will show you how to mount the secondary partition as a home partition. That way it'll automatically mount as your home. So when you go to, so if we have a look at the moment as at our home here, and we've got pictures and videos and all that, that's part of your system, the operating system partition. It's part of root. It's not part of anything else. But if when we do an install and we mount this 32 gig as your home partition, anything under home, including, let's go Control H. So you got all these config files and all that is part of your home. They will be on a separate partition if you mount it as /home instead of being part of the root partition. So that's what we're going to do on the second install, just change it up a bit. So that is the finish of the legacy install. Shall now move on to the EFI install. Just thought it's important to note here that in the display, enable 3D on any of these installs. I've switched that off because Plasma runs much better with the 3D acceleration off. Otherwise, it runs pretty badly. So we're going to select our Archlabs ISO again, Archlabs, and start that up. And you'll notice the difference. If you see the difference in the boot screen here, it's completely different to the legacy one. That's how you can tell if you're in EFI or legacy. EFI has a very plain, sort of nice looking one, whereas legacy has like a box type one. So that's the difference between the two. So let's boot that up. So once again, we are in the same screen. So what we're going to do is type Archlabs-installer. And we are in the same thing again. So let's press OK. US English for me. So we'll go through this a bit quicker now because we've done all the formalities in the first install. So we're going to go to partitioning. OK. I'm going to use cfdisk. And this occasion, we're not going to use DOS. We're going to use, I think it didn't even ask us for this one on the legacy one because it knew it was in legacy. We can choose DOS here, but normally GPT is best if you're using EFI. So what we'll do is create new. Now, in this one, we're going to, and if you have a look at the bottom there, it says maybe followed by capital M for megabytes, G for gigabytes, T for terabytes, or S for sectors. So in this case, I'm going to do a 512 capital M megabytes for a, that's going to be EFI Boot. So we're going to go to type and we're going to enter that and we're going to choose EFI system up the top, EFI system. Write that, yes. Now we're going to create a new one here. Make that 25G, enter. Write that, yes. Down here, a new one again, we'll make that 31G this time because we've used a little bit more space for the boot partition. 31G, write that yes, and then this free space here, a new one is 4.6 gigs for swap. So we'll enter that, select type, and we'll make that Linux swap. And write that one, yes. Now we can quit. we can go to arrow down to done, enter that, and return to the main menu. We'll mount partitions. So it's going to ask us where to mount the root partition, which will be in dev SDA2 this time, because we've added an extra boot partition there. So we'll enter that. It'll be ext4. Format dev SDA2 as ext4, yes. Enter that, we'll use default. Mount was a success. Now for the swap setup, we've got our swap file there, or swap partition. Enter that. Do we want to mount extra? Yes, what we'll do is we'll mount this one with an ext4, format that yes, and we'll mount that as /home. Press enter and enter. And we are back to the boots, to the main menu. Select bootloader. We are going to use a simple UEFI boot manager, which is the top one, that one there. That will find your EFI boot. Username, tab, password, and tab, and let's try that one again. I don't know what I did wrong there. Tab, 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 okay. System configuration, use bash, Archlabs -vbox -EFI, so we know which one it is. Page down until we get to EN and up to AU, Australia and Perth, and the top Linux one there. Select window manager and we go down to Plasma, press the space bar, enter for OK, SDDM, enter. Now select additional packages. We could do what we did before, but I'm not going to do that. And then we can view the configuration and a boot device. Now you can see that it's got a boot partition as SDA1. The boot device is dev SDA, which is the whole disk. So that's the disk it's using, but it's using dev SDA1 as the boot, as you can see there. And that had nothing, I believe, on the first legacy because it was using the boot device's dev SDA for the MBR. So that looks good to me. Enter that, confirm choices, and away we go. Okay, so that's the installer finish for EFI. So we can, in the first one, we can edit any of these files if needed to, but I don't need to, so I'm just going to click the finished and enter for OK. And let's select Archlabs Linux. Let's log into the system. Now don't forget, you can do a very simple install where Archlabs does everything for you, which I explained very quickly in the first install. So you can do that and you don't have to go through all that. So let's just check out the home partition, which will be this one here. And if you have a look at that, all your home stuff is in here in the 31 gig. 25 gig is your root partition. And if you open home, you've got that there, but your home partition is in here. So that'll be automatically mounted, which it is. So you could do another install to the 25 gig partition and the home will already be there for you. It would probably ask you if you wanted to add any extras and you would just mount that partition as home. I think that's how it would work. If your home was existing, that's something you would need to look at. So even though you do have a separate data partition or a separate home partition, it's always best to have backups of everything you got on there. So if something does go catastrophically wrong, you've got all your precious files and folders and so forth all backed up. So it's always important to do that before you do anything. So if we wanted to install guest editions on here, let's just try that and do the same thing as the last one. Dolphin File Manager. And we go to here, click on this and go back one, open in terminal. Let's full screen that this time, Control plus. Do you wish to continue? Yes. So we need again to do this one here, and that's done. So let's install that, enter. Okay, that's complete, and then we go back to that command again, this one here. Okay, so that's done. So we'll close that, do a quick reboot, and we have our full screen. Log into the system, and there we have our full screen. So let's just have a quick look through and make sure that yes, there'll be nothing in here. I didn't select any applications, which is different to the legacy boot. As you can see, it's all pretty empty in there. Oh, that's settings. So there's no multimedia, there's nothing, no Office. So as you can see, there's nothing much there at all. So that is two different types of install for Archlabs, Legacy and EFI, and doing manual disk partitioning. I haven't done an install for the simple install because I mean all you pretty much got to do is select that and install it. That's pretty straightforward, and it should do everything for you. It'll create the disk for you as long as you have a whole disk that's available to you, that you don't care what's on it, and you're going to wipe all the data off that disk, then you don't have to do manual install. But even with the manual install, if you've got data on a disk, it makes it difficult. So you probably, in all cases, you're more than likely going to be using the whole disk anyway. So if you're going to be using Archlabs, you're probably best just to make a disk available. That way, back up all your stuff, just get yourself a hard drive, back up all your stuff on your existing device, whatever it may be, desktop, laptop, whatever. Back up all your stuff, all your files and folders and so forth, videos and documents and whatever. And then make sure that's all backed up, and then just make that whole disk available, because with Archlabs, it's not as easy and it's not a GUI like a lot of other installs. So I just thought I'd demonstrate if the way you can have a little bit more control over how you have your partitions, rather than just doing a simple go ahead and do it for me type thing. So that were the two different installs for Archlabs. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it interesting and informative. And thanks for watching.